On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died tragically at the age of 32. The official cause of death, a fatal reaction to aspirin.
Bruce Lee was more than a man. He was a storm in motion, a force that shattered barriers with every strike. But on July 20th, 1915, that storm still went. For decades, the world has wrestled with one haunting question. How could someone so alive, so unstoppable, vanish so suddenly? Conspiracy theories, medical reports, and myth-making have all tried to fill the silence. But now, in 2025, a new discovery flips the script. It's not what you've heard before, and it may change how we understand everything about his final moments. Was it the body, the mind, or something hidden in plain sight? A global icon in martial arts. Bruce Lee was more than just a martial artist. He was a cultural phenomenon whose influence transcended borders, disciplines, and generations. Born in 1940 in San Francisco to Li Hoi-chuen, a prominent Chinese opera star, and Grace Ho, Bruce was immersed in performance and artistry from birth. Though American-born, he was raised in Hong Kong, where he began acting in local films as a child. This early exposure to both Eastern and Western worlds would shape his identity and future. His life was a blend of two cultures, Chinese heritage and American modernity, which positioned him uniquely to challenge traditional boundaries and reinvent what it meant to be an international figure in entertainment and martial arts. Bruce Lee's first major breakthrough in the West came with his portrayal of Kato in the Green Hornet TV series 1966. Though the show lasted only one season, Lee's charisma and physical prowess made a lasting impression on American audiences. At a time when Asian characters in Hollywood were often sidelined or caricatured, Lee portrayed a strong, skilled, and intelligent hero. His screen presence was so powerful that many viewers began referring to the show as the Kato Show, reflecting how he outshone even the lead role. This marked the beginning of his journey as a cross-cultural icon, opening doors for Asian representation in mainstream American media. What made Bruce Lee very unique in terms of his mingling of martial arts with philosophical thought and cinematic expression. For instance, he had his own martial arts philosophy termed Jeet Kune Do, which emphasized adaptability, practicality, and self-expression. However, he went beyond it to use martial arts as a platform for brooding on more profound ideas, such as those concerned with identity, discipline, and self-control. He was quite the writer on personal development and Eastern philosophy, and combined it with Western ideas of individualism and self-realization. Thus, he was more than just a fighter and an actor, a thinker and a teacher who speaks very much, even now, all over the world, thanks to such intellectual depth in combination with physical talent. In the end, Bruce Lee became the figure that defines cultural hybridity and global aspiration. His audiences across the East and West found him inspiring as he broke generalizations yet successfully redefined what an action hero must embody. Living in between worlds, Chinese and American, martial arts and philosophy, performer and pioneer, he built bridges across that world. The legacy of a man does not only lie in the films he made or the punches he threw, but also in the lives he touched and the walls he broke down. Bruce Lee remains timeless, not only for the act he accomplished as a superstar, but for the continued inspiring values he transmitted through his life. His story didn't stop at breaking into Hollywood. What he did next would redefine martial arts, cinema, and personal mastery forever. Bruce Lee's groundbreaking achievements. Bruce Lee's impact on martial arts cinema was nothing short of revolutionary. With films like The Big Boss, 1971, Fist of Fury, 1972, and Enter the Dragon, 1973, Lee redefined how martial arts were portrayed on screen. Before his rise, martial arts films were often niche, lacking the cinematic style and dynamic choreography that would later become industry standards. Lee brought a new level of realism, intensity, and charisma that captivated international audiences. His fight scenes were not only technically impressive, but also emotionally charged, often representing deeper struggles such as honor, identity, and justice. Enter the Dragon, in particular, marked a historic moment as it was one of the first major Hollywood Asian co-productions and helped catapult martial arts into global pop culture. One of Bruce Lee's most enduring contributions to martial arts was the creation of Jeet Kune Do, a philosophy and combat system he developed in the late 1960s. Rejecting the rigid structures of traditional martial arts, Lee believed that no one style had all the answers. Jeet Kune Do emphasized practicality, fluidity, and personal expression, using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. This approach allowed practitioners to adapt techniques from multiple disciplines to suit real-life combat situations. In this way, Lee was not only a master martial artist, but also a pioneering thinker who introduced a modern, open-minded philosophy to the world of combat sports. Bruce Lee stepped out from his film career into Hollywood, dismantling the stereotypes of racial otherness. Roles for Asians indicated servitude or villainy, but he required himself to have solid, complex, and intelligent Asian protagonists, which led him to walk away from those scripts that were devaluing towards his heritage or made him a Western caricature. Lee was very adamant about being a leading man in Hollywood when that was out of the question for an Asian actor in the 60s and early 70s. Eventually, he paved the way for later generations of Asian and Asian American actors. Today, he is recognized all over the world as having changed the frontier for racial barriers in the Hollywood industry. Besides martial arts skills and fame in films, the life of Bruce Lee was a call for unification in physical, mental, and philosophical evolution. Martial arts, in Bruce's opinion, were not just a means of fighting, but also a way to cultivate self-discipline and personal development, and keep oneself in harmony with the body and the mind. He had a tendency to quote philosophers, writing profusely on self-knowledge, fear, and perseverance. His lessons strike a chord with anybody who aspires to personal excellence, not just martial artists, since his achievements and philosophy create a legacy well beyond the silver screen, a legacy born of exploration, honor, and a belief in human potential. The shocking death in 1973. On July 20th, 1973, the world was stunned by the unexpected death of Bruce Lee, one of the most influential martial artists and actors of the 20th century. At just 32 years old, Lee was at the peak of his career and physical prowess. He died in Hong Kong on what should have been a routine day, meeting with colleagues to discuss the film Game of Death. According to reports, he had complained of a headache and was given a common painkiller before lying down to rest. Hours later, he was found unresponsive and was rushed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. The suddenness of his passing shocked not only his fans, but also the medical community and film industry alike. The official cause of death was listed as cerebral edema, a condition involving swelling of the brain due to fluid buildup. This swelling increases intracranial pressure, which can impair brain function and, if severe enough, lead to death. The autopsy revealed no external injuries or signs of trauma, and toxicology reports did not find lethal harmful substances in his system, making the case all the more puzzling. Doctors speculated that Bruce Lee may have had an allergic reaction to the painkiller he was given, which in turn caused the edema. However, even this explanation seemed unsatisfactory to many, considering Lee's incredible physical condition and the benign nature of the medication involved. Notably, This was not the only collapse Bruce Lee had experienced. Exactly 2 months beforehand, in May 1973, Lee passed out during a session after the wraps were off, Enter the Dragon. He was flown to Baptist Hospital in Hong Kong, where he was diagnosed with cerebral edema. After that, he was treated and recovered, but there was no certain explanation for the episode then either. By July, with the same condition returning, questions arose about whether he truly had an underlying problem, unnoticed or misunderstood. Even with much similarity, the two episodes were not ultimately linked in any way, and the events remained murky. Having been in his prime, physically fit, and rising to staggering stardom, Bruce Lee's demise became an event heavily speckled with speculation and conspiracy theories. Some think that he was slain for teaching martial arts to non-Chinese people. Others entertain theories about harmful substances used being involved, supernatural causes, or even family curses. Uncertainty about his medical condition, combined with the grand nature of his life and career, served as lively fuel to the ambiguity of his death. The speculations that filled the decades since have led to multiple biographies and investigations attempting to expose the secrets. Even today, all possible answers remain greatly debated and of great fascination. The Hyponetriia Discovery. In 2025, a groundbreaking medical theory emerged that may finally explain the mysterious death of Bruce Lee. A peer-reviewed study published in the Clinical Kidney Journal proposed that the martial arts legend died from hyponatremia, a condition caused by abnormally low sodium levels in the blood. This new perspective sheds light on an old mystery by linking hyponatremia to cerebral edema, the condition officially cited in Lee's autopsy. While cerebral edema describes the immediate physical cause, swelling of the brain, it does not address what triggered it. The researchers behind the study argue that excessive water intake, combined with other risk factors, likely caused the sodium imbalance that ultimately led to Lee's untimely death. According to the study, Bruce Lee was known to follow a liquid-heavy, low-sodium diet, which may have put him at greater risk of hyponatremia. Reports from those close to him indicate that he consumed a high volume of fluids daily, including juice and water, and that he often avoided solid foods. While this may have been intended as a health-conscious practice, it had unintended physiological consequences. The body requires a certain level of sodium to maintain the balance of fluids in and around cells. When this balance is disrupted by overhydration and insufficient sodium intake, it can cause cells to swell, especially brain cells, leading to cerebral edema. In extreme cases, such as Lee's, this can become fatal. Another important point discussed in the research is the medications Bruce Lee was possibly on during that period. Certain medicines can damage kidney function or otherwise interfere with the body's regulation of water retention and sodium levels. Diuretics, anti-inflammatories, or particular painkillers might stop the body from getting rid of superfluous water, stimulating the onset of hyponatremia in tandem with large fluid intake. Much speculation has surrounded the precise substance taken by Lee the day of his death. Most commonly speculated to be equagesic, a combination painkiller. However, the new research suggests that even commonplace medications could plausibly place him at risk for water-sodium imbalance when administered under certain circumstances. The strength of this new idea lies in the fact that it now presents a medically plausible cause that had otherwise not been fully entertained to tie together facts that are known, namely, a fluid-heavy lifestyle on the part of Lee and cerebral edema. Hyponatremia may be a rare but accepted cause for sudden death in athletes or for those exerting themselves beyond normal limits, but it had garnered little attention in the 1970s. This insight not only furthers our understanding of Bruce Lee's last moments, but it also reframes the story of Lee's death. Instead of crime or half-baked medical explanations, the hyponatremia theory provides a plausible, scientifically backed answer to an old mystery: heat stroke and environmental stress. On July 20th, 1973, the day Bruce Lee, Hong Kong experienced one of the hottest days ever recorded in its history. The extreme heat, combined with high humidity, created a stifling environment that posed serious health risks, even for someone in peak physical condition. While much of the conversation around Lee's death has focused on medical conditions like cerebral edema or, more recently, hyponatremia, environmental factors have often been overlooked. However, the severe heat on that day may have played a more significant role than previously acknowledged, particularly in exacerbating other underlying health issues. Biographer Matthew Polly, author of Bruce Lee: A Life, has argued that heat stroke should be considered a likely contributing factor to Bruce Lee's sudden death. Heat stroke occurs when the body's internal temperature rises to dangerous levels due to prolonged exposure to high temperatures and insufficient cooling mechanisms, such as sweating or hydration. This condition can lead to multi-organ failure and brain swelling, symptoms that are consistent with the cerebral edema noted in Lee's autopsy. Polly emphasizes that Bruce had been working intensively on film projects in unventilated spaces, adding to the physical stress he was already under. The theory adds a compelling layer to the discussion by introducing external, environmental stressors into the equation. The relationship between heat stroke and cerebral edema is medically well established. When the body overheats, it cannot maintain a normal internal temperature, especially when fluid levels and electrolytes are disturbed. Under these conditions, the brain, being one of the most temperature-sensitive organs, becomes especially vulnerable. So, in this light, if Bruce Lee was indeed in massive fluid intake, without sufficient electrolyte intake, which is proposed by the hyponatremic theory, then exposure to heat would be likely to aggravate the swelling in his brain further. Any exertion combined with heat and dehydration forms a perfect storm for health failure, even in someone who is a paragon of physical conditioning, like Lee. The environmental stress attributable to the heat might have aggravated any pre-existing weaknesses. If Bruce Lee was already struggling with sodium balance or recovering from a previous collapse in May 1973, extreme heat could have been an additional burden tipping the balance. With high temperatures and an already compromised fluid balance, salt-excreting mechanisms did not work optimally, allowing the body to cool via sweating. In this case, heat stroke would not have been the sole cause of death. It would rather be the principal accelerant of exacerbation of the underlying physiological conditions. Due to examining heat stroke within this framework, we can thus obtain a more holistic approach toward understanding Bruce Lee's untimely death, which is complex and multifactorial. As scientific theories evolved, so did the rumors, fueled not by evidence, but by the aura of a man who seemed too powerful to fall. Popular myths. Over the decades since Bruce Lee's untimely death, numerous popular myths and conspiracy theories have emerged, attempting to explain how a seemingly invincible martial arts icon could die so suddenly at the age of 32. One of the most enduring theories is that Lee was assassinated by the Chinese Triads, a powerful criminal organization, for teaching kung fu to non-Chinese students. At the time, some traditional martial arts communities frowned upon sharing sacred techniques with outsiders. Lee's decision to openly teach his hybrid martial arts philosophy, Jeet Kune Do, to people of all backgrounds sparked controversy, especially within conservative circles. This narrative, though dramatic and culturally charged, lacks concrete evidence and has never been substantiated by any credible investigation or legal finding. Another theory points to Bruce Lee's intense and unconventional training regimen as a possible factor in his death. Known for pushing his body to extremes, Lee was a relentless perfectionist when it came to physical conditioning. He experimented with everything from isometric exercises and high-speed workouts to specialized diets. Critics of his lifestyle argue that his constant drive for peak performance may have placed unbearable stress on his body, leading to eventual collapse. However, no medical reports from the time of his death directly support the idea that overtraining was the primary cause. In fact, Lee's physical exams consistently showed him to be in exceptional health, further challenging this assumption. The proposition that cannabis was found in Bruce Lee's system after his death paved the way for another theory, some theorizing that marijuana or some related substance could have caused a fatal reaction. While there was not wide acceptance of cannabis at the time, modern toxicology now believes that it would be very rare if marijuana alone had caused his death, with Lee's stomach content put at the small amount reported. The official coroner's report stated that the trace amount was not one that could contribute to his cerebral edema. Still, the use of harmful substances and the sudden death would find their way into fictional accounts and conspiracy-driven narratives. There was no scientific or legal substantiation for these theories. They were, instead, and much to the detriment of legitimate medical investigations, a reflection of the public struggle in attempting to rationalize how such a vibrant and physically gifted individual could die so naturally. Such myths reflect more on Lee's elevated status and mystique surrounding his persona than objective investigation. The death, rather like the life, was fertile ground for speculation, spurred on by his rapid rise into fame and the emptiness left behind by his departure. While fascinating, these theories might end up being more speculation than truth, and deserve a critical analysis. The cultural clash. In Quentin Tarantino's 2019 film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Bruce Lee is portrayed in a brief but highly controversial scene that quickly sparked backlash across the world. The scene depicts Lee, played by actor Mike Moe, engaging in a boastful conversation before challenging stuntman Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, to a fight. Lee comes across as cocky and arrogant, claiming he could cripple Muhammad Ali, and is ultimately thrown into a car by Booth in a comedic, almost slapstick fashion. While meant to add humor and tension, many viewers felt the scene reduced Bruce Lee to a caricature, undermining his real-life dignity, humility, and significance as a cultural icon. Quentin Tarantino defended the scene by stating that the film was a fictionalized version of 1960s Hollywood, and that liberties were taken for the sake of storytelling. He insisted that the portrayal was consistent with the film's revisionist tone and not meant to be a factual representation of Bruce Lee. Tarantino also cited interviews where he claimed Bruce Lee had made similar comments about Muhammad Ali, using this as partial justification for the script. However, critics argued that even within a fictional world, portraying a real person in such a misleading way, especially one with limited screen time to balance the image, was unfair and irresponsible. For many, the issue was not just about character choices, but about perpetuating stereotypes of Asian men as overly confident or easily mocked. Among the fiercest of critics for his portrayal were the ones exemplified by Shannon Lee, daughter of Bruce Lee, who publicly condemned the film for distortions to her father's legacy. She spoke of her deep discomfort with audiences who were laughing at a version of Bruce Lee she found unrecognizable and offensive. According to Shannon, her father had spent years working against racial stereotypes, mainly to earn Asian men portrayals in Western media as strong, intelligent, and honorable, something mainly unheard of in Hollywood back then. To have the major motion picture image of him become an arrogant punching bag decades later was, from her perspective, a symbolic step back for the work he had begun. The infamy around the scene opened up the avenue for a larger dialogue surrounding Hollywood's representation of Asian Americans. Numerous critics and several advocates seized that moment to point out possible cases where these Asian characters are supposed to be misrepresented or downtrodden in Western films. Bruce Lee, the pioneer for serious and dignified portrayals of Asians in cinema, has now become the symbol for ongoing struggles to achieve fair representation. So, the backlash against Tarantino's portrayal reiterates why portrayals in popular media matter when it comes to their functions in the entertainment sphere, but also in forming public perception, cultural respect, and a historical legacy. 1965 training routine revealed. In 2024, renewed attention was drawn to Bruce Lee's physical conditioning when a 1965 workout journal from the martial arts icon resurfaced online. The handwritten notes, verified by historians and members of the Bruce Lee Foundation, provided a rare glimpse into Lee's personal training habits during the early stages of his fame. The journal detailed his daily exercises, meal planning, and fitness philosophies, sparking widespread debate across martial arts communities, fitness circles, and popular culture. For a figure so often regarded as superhuman in his physical prowess, the journal offered a grounded and humanizing perspective, one rooted not in mystique, but in structured, disciplined practice. The training entries revealed a focus on speed, flexibility, and endurance, rather than traditional bodybuilding or powerlifting. Lee emphasized practical movements such as shadowboxing, jump rope, isometric exercises, and stretching. His cardio routines were intense but efficient, prioritizing full body conditioning without bulking up. This approach aligned closely with his martial arts philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, which valued adaptability and function over form. Lee believed a martial artist should move efficiently and strike precisely, and his training mirrored that principle. In an era where bigger muscles were often equated with superior strength, Lee's emphasis on agility and quickness stood out as revolutionary. It was surprising to certain critics how modest the routine looked, compared with the romanticized picture of Bruce as some kind of superhuman physical specimen, in spite of how consistent and logical the program was. Questions were raised as to whether this limited amount of training could be enough to account for the explosive speed, defined musculature, and raw power he displayed on screen. Skeptics argued that present-day athletes and fitness enthusiasts train for longer periods and with added intensity than Lee ever did, which would mean that the training program he followed is somewhat exaggerated. Some even speculated that the journal reflected only a partial view of his full training scope, or that it may have been intended more as a conceptual outline than a literal daily plan. On the other hand, supporters of Bruce Lee see the resurfaced journal as reaffirming his core training philosophy that martial arts and physical conditioning should have real-world functions as opposed to purely aesthetic ones. They argue that Lee's body came not from lifting the heaviest weights, but from understanding biomechanics, nutrition, and consistency better than most contemporaries did. His routines showed an understanding of ends toward a wise insight, proving that true strength lies in precision, not in raw size. Not only does the journal humanize Bruce Lee, but it also further solidifies his legacy as a pioneer who went against the current when it came to fitness and martial arts. The 2025 Chinatown Statue Project. In 2025, San Francisco's Chinatown will take a significant step in honoring the enduring legacy of Bruce Lee with the planned erection of a permanent statue in his likeness. This initiative, long in the making, reflects both a cultural tribute and a historical acknowledgement of Lee's impact as a martial artist, actor, and civil rights figure. Although Lee was born in San Francisco in 1940, his legacy has always extended far beyond geographical boundaries. The statue will serve not only as a visual celebration of his achievements, but also as a symbol of unity and inspiration for the Asian American community and the broader public. The project is being spearheaded by the Chinese Historical Society of America, CHSA, which has taken the lead in fundraising, design coordination, and community outreach. The organization aims to celebrate Bruce Lee's legacy in a manner that highlights his contributions to film, martial arts, and the ongoing fight against racial stereotypes. The statue will be placed in a prominent location within Chinatown, symbolizing both local pride and global recognition. CHSA representatives have stated that the monument will also serve as an educational piece, helping visitors understand the historical and cultural context in which Bruce Lee rose to prominence. The CHSA calls for raising $150,000 to energize the project through a well-rounded combination of private donations, public grants, and cultural partnerships. There are legions of community members, martial arts schools, and fans from all corners of the globe supporting this project, as it serves to finally pay tribute to a man who managed to break into components in many fields. Special events, including movie screenings, art auctions, and cultural festivals, have been organized to help raise funds for bringing the project to fruition. This campaign is also a tab for those inspired by Bruce Lee's teachings and philosophy to contribute, yet offers a way to be part of a lasting tribute. The statue would stand not merely as a memorial to Bruce Lee's cinematic fame, but as an acknowledgement of the role he played in demolishing racial barriers and redefining, in a way, the representation of Asian characters within Western media. He insisted on characters with full empowerment and complexity who were diametrically opposed to the worn-out norm of the time. His mastery of the art soon became a source of pride in the Asian American community and inspired countless people around the world through cultures, a symbolic paragon of self-assertion that has yet to be fully appreciated. Beyond just a memorial, the statue that will be erected in 2025 is a testament to the legacy of a man who fought not only with his fists, but with his ideas, and who continues to live on in his influence on generations long after his death. While the statue stands to honor his legacy in stone, a deeper look into Bruce Lee's story reveals truths far more personal and far more revealing than any monument can capture. A legend re-examined. In recent years, modern medical science has brought new clarity to the long-standing mysteries surrounding Bruce Lee's sudden death. For decades, the official explanation, cerebral edema, left more questions than answers, especially given Lee's exceptional physical condition and young age. However, recent theories, including the 2025 study proposing hyponetremia as a likely root cause, have provided a more plausible, evidence-based narrative. This shift from speculation to science underscores how far medical understanding has advanced since the 1970s, and reminds us that even icons like Bruce Lee are subject to the same biological vulnerabilities as anyone else. It also helps demystify the legend by grounding his story in real human challenges rather than supernatural or conspiratorial interpretations. Bruce Lee's life and legacy also serve as powerful reminders of the importance of accurate cultural representation and storytelling. In both life and death, Lee challenged Hollywood's tendency to stereotype Asian characters, and he worked tirelessly to portray Asian people as strong, intelligent, and multifaceted. The controversy over his depiction in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood reignited public debate about how real figures are portrayed in fiction, particularly when those figures represent historically marginalized groups. Lee's insistence on dignity and depth in his roles has made him an enduring figure in the conversation around racial equity in media, proving that representation isn't just about visibility. It's about authenticity and respect. Public attention to Bruce Lee's life and premature death accentuates the myth versus reality construct that haunts celebrity culture. Over the years, so many biographies, documentaries, rumors, and conspiracies surrounding Lee have developed. This myth-making behavior brings to mind the general tendency for humanity to elevate cultural icons into demigods when abrupt endings characterize their narratives. But with the availability of more factual accounts and scholarly research, a more complex and accurate image of Bruce Lee shall emerge. Not an immaculate superhuman, but rather a disciplined visionary who synthesized unparalleled talent with an indomitable work ethic and acute self-reflection. To gain insight into the man beneath the myth magnifies rather than occludes the enormity of his impact. Ultimately, Bruce Lee is forever a symbol of growth, discipline, and perseverance. His teachings continue to inspire people of all backgrounds and cultures to transcend their limits, engage in their own self-expression, and seek an inner and outer balance. Lee's message transcends martial arts, film, philosophy, and social justice, for it engages with universal desires to live one's truth, to have meaning. In continuously emerging insights about his life and death, the legacy of a man who, even in death, is still teaching us how to challenge life with character and clarity, only expands. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive into Bruce Lee's mysterious final chapter intriguing, don't forget to like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts or theories, and subscribe for more untold stories and real martial arts history. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And don't go anywhere. Click the next video on your screen to uncover more about Bruce Lee's life, legacy, and the truth behind the legend.